I have been coming to this country for nearly 23 years, and in all that time, the symbol on the shield there of the statue of the motherland of Ukraine has been the hammer and sickle of the Soviet Union. No longer. From today, the trident, the Ukrainian trident, is now on that shield. Now and forever. The Tryzub has risen. This is some old footage I found in my archive of the statue. It's a prominent figure of the city skyline. This stock photo shows the old symbol on the shield. When news came this morning that the trident had replaced the icon of the Soviet Union, some residents came out to mark this historic change, including this old man who no doubt remembers what the USSR was like and decided to take an historic photo with his grandchild. Think about that. I mean, it's no mistake that this statue was put here. This is one of the highest points in the city, over which it looks basically onto the entire capital. And so you had the hammer and sickle, the symbol of so much pain and the cause of so much pain in Ukraine's history. That would be the symbol overlooking all. Well, no longer. And I'm not going to make the equivalency with the swastika or the Confederate stars and bars. Still, there are parallels. But to have the hammer and sickle in a prominent spot overlooking Kiev was a constant insult to many here. And yes, sure, the Ukrainians are proud of their military past. Heck, they're proud of their military present, but they don't forget the Second World War and the efforts that happened here. But the split between Moscow and Kiev cannot be overstated. And part of it is due to the bitter history of the Second World War and other sections of the history when Ukraine was dominated by the Tsarist Empire. This now is a chance for Ukraine to break out from under Moscow's thumb. And, you know, those who have been saying that this place is filled with Nazis, you're only propagating Russian talking points. It's not true. And I'm going to take this moment in time to also do a little bit of what I call the constant gardening of pushing back against this Nazi narrative. In Moscow, in Russia, there is fertile ground for fascism because they were yes, Russia is now a multi-ethnic state, but they were a state that expanded as the Mongol horde was defeated and pushed back. So they expanded out and gained multiculturalism and multi-ethnicism by conquest, as opposed to here in Ukraine, where yes, there were indigenous groups that fought against one another, but by and large, the multi-ethnicity of this country has come about because it has been the tragic victim of other imperial aspirations by their neighbors. So there's fertile ground here for democracy because they've always had to negotiate amongst one another, the different ethnic groups. That's why I think Nazis who come here and try to stoke up fascist sentiment will find little shrift. As opposed to that, as I explained, Russia, which has become multi-ethnic but has a dominant core ethnicity of Russian, and by that they essentially mean white European Russians, that is a place that is perfectly suited for fascism, as we're seeing now in Putin's Russia. The main reason of the park is to remember the Second World War, but in a very different way than it is in Russia, mainly because much of the blood shed in that conflict was spilt here. Moscow is not the only one who has license to write that history. The plan is to have the shield completely changed by August 24th, the day of Ukraine's independence celebrations. There's also talk of getting rid of the statue altogether, as it is indelibly connected to other such statues throughout the former Soviet Union, like in Volgograd, or even in the capital of the Georgian Republic, Tbilisi. Some want a brand new motif, a budding wheat shaft, for example, to show a new country growing from the fertile Ukrainian soil.
You know, and look, obviously the history between Russia and Ukraine is really lengthy, really complicated, often tragic, but nuanced. In many ways, from a Ukrainian perspective, the cause of much of the pain and suffering of the last 2 centuries comes out of Moscow. And so today seems like a big deal. So sometimes symbolic gestures, well, they mean an awful lot. And I feel like today it's one of those gestures. As my friend, the Ukrainian poetess Anastasia Dmytryk puts it, we will never be brothers. And I feel that message very strongly in what's happening behind me. As always, Slava Ukraini, I Geroyam Slava.